Humans have always been fascinated by the stories hiding within the past. The chance of finding a shard of pottery or a fragment of bone that could shed light on what life was like hundreds or even thousands of years ago fuels many archaeologists, as well as amateur explorers. These people spend years of their lives hunting for answers. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 discoveries and the light shed on lives lived long ago. Neolithic Skull found by mudlarks. The muddy banks of the Thames have long provided us with clues as to what life was like hundreds of years ago, as ancient artifacts and fragments from the civilization that lived along those banks frequently wash up with the tides. This happens so often, in fact, that an entire subculture has grown up around searching for these clues. Mudlarks are amateur archaeologists who, after obtaining a permit from the Port of London Authority, flock to the banks of the Thames during low tide to collect any fascinating objects that might have been uncovered by the receding water. They're responsible for several artifacts currently on display in the Museum of London, and recently added another impressive find to their repertoire. After uncovering the fragments of a human skull while searching the banks, alarmed mudlarks immediately alerted the local police, who then launched a full-scale crime scene investigation of the rest of the banks. The fragment was carbon dated, and it was discovered the skull was likely not a player in an active homicide case, as it dated back to the Neolithic era. After analysis, the skull appeared to come from a male over the age of 18 who lived 5,600 years ago. This makes it one of the oldest human remains found in the Thames. Mudlarks continued their search, but were unsuccessful in locating any more of the skull. Unsurprisingly, as his body has been at the mercy of the water for almost 6 millennia. The man lived around 3600 BC during the New Stone Age. This began about 6,000 years ago with the development of farming, and it ended as Britain moved into the Bronze Age around 2000 BC. During this time, the area around London was covered in extensive woodlands. There wasn't any permanent settlements, although there was some evidence of farmsteads, likely making the Neolithic man a farmer in the region. However, this wasn't farming as we understand it today. Based off of flint tools and pottery found in the area, archaeologists speculate their lifestyle consisted of semi-nomadic herding, supplemented by more settled agriculture. The Thames was a vital resource for these people, who relied on it for water and fertilization of the land. There's even evidence that these early people worshipped the Thames as sacred, and sent rare and beautiful weapons and pottery as offerings to the river. Although we'll never know if this man was one of these offerings, or if his body ended up in the water as a result of the changing course of the Thames, he serves as an important point of study for researchers trying to learn more about the presence of early humans in the area. Fungus destroying a buried Viking ship near Halden. In late 2018, archaeologists using radar to search a well-known Viking archaeological site near Halden in southeastern Norway discovered a buried Viking ship. This was named the Gjelstad ship after the area it was found. It was resting underground in a Viking cemetery where it had been ritually buried according to ancient custom, and measured 20 meters long. Viking ships are archaeological treasure troves of information for historians, but the team was initially hesitant to excavate this ship due to the damage that open air can have on wet, rotting wood. Unfortunately, earlier this year they made a discovery that forced their hand. Further analysis reveals that what remains of the ship is covered in a fungus that's slowly devouring the wood. This makes it a race against time to save this priceless time capsule before it's lost to decay. The ship is already extremely decomposed due to the length of time that it's been at the mercy of this damp soil. The solid wood keel and iron nails are all that remain, but the fungus covering the keel has caused it to become extremely brittle. The excavation process that archaeologists must now use is painstaking, but it's vital if this valuable piece of heritage and history is to be saved. First, they must carefully strip the topsoil, processing what they remove for a sieve to search for artifacts that might have been tilled up by farmers over the centuries. Then they'll construct a weatherproof tent over the site for protection as they begin to remove the soil around and inside of the ship. Each layer of wood will be 3D scanned as it's exposed, along with any imprints in the surrounding dirt for later analysis of what the missing parts of the ship may have looked like. The wooden remains that are uncovered will have to be kept damp and preserved to keep the already rotting wood from crumbling further. Any organic material around the decomposed wood will also be analysed to provide archaeologists with valuable information about what might have been buried in the Viking cemetery around the large ship. If the operation is successful, it will be the first Viking ship to be excavated in Norway in 115 years. Viking ships like this one were built for travelling long distances in the turbulent sea between the end of the 8th century and the beginning of the 10th century. This specific ship was likely made to both row and sail, although archaeologists are unsure whether this ship included a mast, and won't be sure until the excavations have progressed further and they can carefully analyse the 3D scans. It's vital to attempt to save as much of this ship as possible, so valuable information about Viking culture that lies covered in thousands of years of dirt and rot can finally be brought to light. Ancient human hybrid. Before humans existed as the Homo sapiens of today, several distinct and primitive species roamed the earth, mixing their genomes over tens of thousands of years until the genotype of current Homo sapiens established. The Denisova cave in Siberia was home to two of these groups of early hominins, the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. Although encounters between these two groups was likely not uncommon, as nearly all Denisovan bone fragments from the area contain traces of Neanderthal DNA, the two populations remained genetically distinct for thousands of years. This was due to the group's sparse populations over a large geographic area. A first-generation offspring from these two groups was never found. Until 2018, when archaeologists analysing specimens from the cave discovered the finger bone fragment of a female who lived over 90,000 years ago. She had a genome indicating that her mother was a Neanderthal and her father was a Denisovan. The individual, nicknamed Denny, astonished researchers. Previously, the closest example of ancient human species interbreeding was a Homo sapiens, with Neanderthal ancestor within 4 to 6 generations. A first-generation person of this ancient mixed ancestry was totally unheard of and almost unimaginable. Scientists initially sequenced the mitochondrial DNA. This is inherited solely from the mother and is distinct from the main genome, and identified Denny's mother as a Neanderthal. Interestingly, her mother was more closely related to a Neanderthal in Croatia than in the ones of the region. After assuming Denny must be a Neanderthal like her mother, researchers quickly realised they didn't have the full picture. As they began sequencing her genome and comparing it to the sequences from Neanderthal and Denisovan fragments around the region, around 40% of the sequence matched the Neanderthal DNA, as expected. However, they were surprised to discover that another 40% matched the Denisovan DNA. Since there was roughly equal amounts of each, it indicated that Denny had one parent from each group. Further gene analysis confirmed these findings. Denny was the first-generation offspring of two distinct human species. She's also the only one of this kind that's ever been found. Denny will now play a key role in research of early human species. Scientists continue to attempt to piece together how so many human species evolved into the Homo sapiens of today. They will look at her example as they attempt to answer questions such as, why did the species gene pool remain distinct for thousands of years if they were known to frequently mix? Were these hybrid offspring infertile, as can happen when crossing different species? Although these questions elude us now, Denny is undoubtedly a stepping stone to greater understandings of our own species. The further we look into the past, the harder it is to find the remnants of lives lived that can tell us about where we came from. And the further back we go, the smaller the artefacts that we rely on to learn about history become. Archaeologists and amateur sleuths might spend the better part of their lives searching through ancient caves and mud. This could be to only find a sliver of bone, or dirt impressions left over from something long ago decayed. However, these tiny artifacts can tell researchers so much about the people they belong to. Each tiny clue functions as a valuable piece in the puzzle that attempts to answer the question, where did we come from? So what do you make of these interesting facts? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community whilst working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.